How do you know if you are an undereater or an overeater? Okay, what really determines that? Okay, there are some standard measurements or standard numbers, calculations that we do, whether it's me as a trainer or whether it's a registered dietitian or any other person that would deal with nutrition or sports nutrition, that sort of thing. There are standard calculations that we know. So, for example, if you are a 200, let's say that you are a 250-pound female. Basically, we're going to take 250 times 10, that's 2,500, okay? And that's your basic or your bottom line metabolic rate. That means that pretty much you eat, on an average, no less than 2,500 as an average per day to stay at the weight you're at, okay? Now, I have a lot of women say, but I'm eating 1,200 calories a day. So what happens when we are 250 pounds and we're a female and we're a midlife, at least in, 50s and above, and we're eating 1,200 calories a day, usually that's somebody who's trying to diet. And what happens is you go into such a such a high deficit but low caloric intake that your body ends up kind of starving and you end up binging. Binging doesn't mean like the medical diagnosis binging. It just means that you end up overeating at different times through the week. Now, it doesn't happen every day, so therefore you're able to talk yourself into saying, oh, it doesn't happen that often, okay? I've been through it all, so I already know all the secrets, okay? Secrets, all the trickeries of your own brain, okay? So, and I've witnessed this with ladies year after year after year. And the only way you can be sure of what you're doing is to measure by logging, write down what you're consuming, okay? And you have to be the one you have to want to look at that day you binged. You have to write it all down. So if you were to really write it all down and you were to average every 7 days, okay? You may have 7 days of a huge deficit, 7 days of a huge deficit, but somewhere in that month, you're going to have a week or two of overages, okay, or different averages. So pretty much what happens is if you eat little all through week and then you eat more on the weekends, but you don't log it and you're just kind of chucking it off to it's no big deal, that's how you're staying the same weight, okay? It would be better for you to eat more through the week and not eat on the weekends because it's actually an emotional habit. How do you know if you're an overeater? Because every single day your caloric intake is 2,500 to 3,000, 22 to 2,700. Okay, that's every day. That's how you know you're an overeater. Okay, and I, all my life, have been a true overeater. Okay, but those of you that can go for many days at 1,200, 1,500, 1,800, and then have a bunch of overages that you aren't willing to put in black and white, that makes you an undereater. Okay, because most of your days you're under the caloric needs that your body needs. Okay, so it's important to know where you stand because if you are an undereater, then my job with you is to help you become an average eater, meaning you're going to eat a little closer to your BMR, okay, your basic metabolic rate. And what we do is, let's say that you're a 250-pound female, and that would mean about 2,500 calories per day. So I would talk you into eating somewhere around 1,800 to 2,000, and that would create a fat loss, okay? Eating 1,200 when you're a 2,500 person keeps you in such a deficit that you actually will store more fat. You definitely won't burn fat because that's what happens to the body. We tend to just kind of call it survival mode, okay? And it's not wrong. It happens and it's there for a reason. So if you don't want your body to be stuck in survival mode, which actually causes more cortisol, which actually causes more belly fat, you want to make sure that you're eating enough calories for your size. Okay, your size and your gender, because males need even more. So if you're a 250-pound male, oh boy, okay, oh boy, and you want to drop some weight, you're going to need to make sure that you're eating closer to 2,000, no doubt, all right? So that is my lecture for whether you are an overeater or an undereater, and the only way you're really going to know is to log it, because if you walk up to me and say, no, I know I'm an undereater or I know I'm an overeater, it won't matter to me what you say because you can't prove to yourself which one you are. And I've had too many instances over the years where ladies tell me I eat too much, And they'll tell me that repeatedly for weeks on end. And when I finally say, listen, I don't want to hear it anymore unless you're going to log it. And when we log it, I'm right every time. They're under eaters. Okay. So that's why I get very adamant. I used to wonder how other trainers could be so strongly adamant. How do they know, really? Well, now I know. I know because you can only go through it handfuls of times before you're like, you know what? I see the pattern in the human female or the pattern in the human male. So if you're an undereater, let's talk about where you need to have your caloric intake for weight loss, for fat loss. If you're an overeater, we need to have the same conversation, but we'll be bringing you down just a little bit. You don't want large deficits, okay? If something happens on one day and you have a huge deficit, that's okay. The next day, just make sure it's not so big. Or it could be eat as much as your BMR is, okay? Doesn't matter, but I like the fluctuating numbers because I'm here to tell you that is how it's been a game changer for me. And if you listen to your body, it will actually tell you what it needs, okay? So I spent the first 3 weeks of this week at 2,100. I'm sorry, the first 3 days of this week at 2,100. I was going to try this little scenario, right, at 2,100. But the problem is I worked out really hard those 3 days also, okay, thinking 2,100 I should be okay with. No, because the next fourth day I had to have 2,800 and the fifth day I had to have 2,500. My body was telling me I needed it. Absolutely. And if you're going to do things that are going to build muscle, you have got to have a little extra to make sure you've got material to build your house. Okay. So that's what I have to say. And if you have any questions, let me know. I'd love to know, are you an overeater or an undereater?